Channeling for me is a way to bring through the clearest possible truth without it being colored by any experience in my life or any influence from others in my life. That will be practical and useful in our times. It is a time of transition, and the main thing you are transitioning out of is a lack of trust, which you learned because you lived your life, eh? You had interactions with people, places, and things. You were born in trust, but you learned otherwise. And the transition is to trust once again. It won't be easy. And you need to have not only good friends, but steadfast friends. Meaning that no matter what, you can count on these beings or individuals to be your friend.
I could travel the whole wide world to find that place inside that makes me smile. Or I could sit right down, spend some time watching the river go by. I could go to school for years and years to find my place in the world where I can shine. Or I could sit right down, spend some time watching the river go by.
I wanted to know, and I wanted to understand. That's basically it. I wanted to know things, and I wanted to understand things. Because life in general was kind of mysterious to me. I didn't understand why this happened, I didn't understand why that happened. And there wasn't a lot of communication about life's mysteries in my family. We loved each other, there was good things happening, but I don't remember too many people sitting me down explaining this is why and this is the reason. And I remember the one book I always wanted as a child, which I never really got, was a book called How Machines Work. And that tells you where I was coming from. I wanted to know how it worked and what it meant and what it did and why. What I like to do is to reveal that which is mysterious, to help you to understand it, and to give you ways and means to utilize it that are totally safe for all beings and can do the greatest good for as many beings as possible. So, because Robbie was interested in that and was channeling various beings who were once alive and well physically on the planet and were Native American shamans and mystical men, then I was able to come through as being one of those beings' teachers. Robbie was asking for such beings who could come through and explain more, and I volunteered, you might say. Robbie is not shy about asking for anyone or anything to channel through him that's compatible with him. But what that means is who has the energy that Robbie is not only attuned to, because he has practiced and learned how to accept greater and greater levels of energy, which takes a great deal of time in order to be done right. Then I was able to speak through him and offer words, knowledge, wisdom, and practices.
There are a lot of people that are familiar with you and your work through the transmissions of Zosh. Is there anything more that you can share with us about your evolution with channeling and your relationship with Zosh over time?
Well, In the beginning years, when I was being assisted by very good friends, including Ed and a few others, I was sort of casting about, you might say. Early on, I discovered I could channel anyone or anything that was compatible with me. My friends and I, we were trying to put together a book, as I may have mentioned, called Allies, which was going to be about ETs, who they are, where they're from, why they're here, meaning why they visited. In the course of that, a being came through named Zosh, and he was totally different than other beings I channeled. You are born curious. This is a given, it's intentional. And what does the curious being do? They explore. Thus, you are the explorer race. Why am I here? And the follow-up would be, what am I supposed to be doing? And this is something people are still interested in. So, the being I was channeling at the time, whoever it might have been, would answer those questions. But, as you know, what you're supposed to be doing sometimes is a far distance from what you actually are doing, and you can't even see how you're going to get there, much less you'd like to have some support to get there. So I felt that the energy might help, and it's true. I came to call that activation. It wasn't any attempt to change people. It was just going to be a lot of energy that would come through that was compatible with their souls and spirits and would feel comfortable to their physical bodies. Zosh presented himself, initially saying he was from Alpha Centauri, and just for the book, and I realize looking back on that now, it was Zosh's way of introducing himself, kind of like in the old-fashioned way, you go to somebody's house and you present your card, and on your card it says your name and maybe one thing you can do, even though you can do a number of other things, professionally or practically. So it was very short. It's really less than a page in the book, but after that, the people who were there, which is a very small group, since we were strictly working on accumulating material for a book and it wasn't a public session, they were just like, they couldn't speak. I felt like I normally did. I felt like the energy was pretty strong and that Zosh was really kind of special and maybe a bit of a character too, because he would kid around a bit. But the energy was incredible. Years later, when I moved from California and didn't see most of those people anymore, my publisher, who's currently my publisher, Light Technology, my publisher's name is Melody, would ask these questions. And she was most impressed with Zosh. And that's how the Zosh books got started, because she was impressed that she could ask Zosh anything. And she proceeded to ask Zosh things along the lines initially of her interests. And many's the time, a private session for her would suddenly, all this amazing information would come out and it would just turn into a book. But the initial opening gambit was her asking something that she was just curious about.
When you channel, is Robert Shapiro still here, present, or is your consciousness receding and others' consciousness comes through?
I know exactly where I am. People used to ask me that, and then they ask all channels and mediums that because they're curious. But because of a youngster in Colorado who had the ability to see energy bodies, and his mom didn't discourage it, she just took it as a gift from God, I know because of his observation exactly where I go. And what he said essentially, allowing for the fact that this happened years ago, he said after the session was over, and I did not know that he could see these things, people asked him what he saw, and he said, well, he said, first the one man was talking, meaning me. And then his light body got up and took 2 steps to the right and stayed there. And then the purple man appeared, which is the being I was channeling then, Zosh, and he stepped in to the man's body and he talked for a while. And then when he was done talking, the purple man stepped out to the left and went up and disappeared, and the other man's light body got back in his body and was talking again. And that's how I know exactly, precisely where I go.
Can you describe feelings that are involved when you're channeling? What are you feeling?
Well, the actual physical feelings, after I say the words that I say to set the tone for the process, which is a blessing and a prayer, then from the top down I feel an energy coming in, while at the same time I feel myself, my personality, letting go. And this is probably then what's happening is that the energy's coming in and I'm stepping out. It's not a sense of a loss of control. It's more of a sense of joining, of a benevolent joining. Not so unlike if you were to see an old friend that you really loved and were thrilled to see them, but not an excitement, just a happiness.
Were there any signs, if any signs, that, you can look back now and say, oh, well, I felt this or this happened or that happened, so of course I was going to become a channel, or of course I was going to be a shaman. What do you see when you look back on your life now that has those indicators?
Well, I was very fortunate because my mom really loved people. And I think she passed that on to me sort of by osmosis, the way parents do. And as a result, I really have an unconditional love for all peoples. I also found that I could get along with anybody, no matter who they were and how they looked. It didn't make a difference what their political beliefs were. I just had a way of getting along with them. And that was a plus. Of course, as you say, looking back now, I can see that those are markers. There were certain aspects of my life that were just mysterious, that I couldn't understand. For example, I remember during the winter that I would often look out my back window. It was on the second floor of our little house, but we did have 2 floors. And I'd be looking into space, literally not up into space, but looking straight out, so that my point of focus was maybe over the center of the backyard, about 18 feet up. And I wouldn't do it consciously. I just noticed I was doing it. And I was a little kid, okay? I just noticed, and I'd say, why am I doing that? And I'd stop. Another thing I used to do is that when I'd roll over on my side, on my right side, I'd look towards the wall sometime, and sometimes I'd catch myself, why am I staring at the wall? Many years later, I had a recollection, the way many people do when you have mysteries in childhood, it comes back. And I had already started channeling, but I was very much in the early stages. And I remembered that I had encounters with ETs. And the reason I stared out the window is at one point that's where the ship was, and the reason I looked at the wall is that at one point that's where the being came into the room, and so on. It all came together. They gave me this book, not permanent, but they said I could have it for a while, and I had it for 10 days. And during that time, I would look at the book, and the book was magical. It had a magical quality. The book was about this big by, say, this big, and it was maybe that thick, something like that. And I remembered that I I put the book up on the top shelf under the blanket so it couldn't be seen. They said it was important that nobody see it, but that I could keep it for 10 days. And in true fashion, just like your beloved uncle or beloved sister might do, they traded me for the book. They knew how to talk to children. So at that time I had a flashlight, one of my most prized possessions. A World War II surplus flashlight. I love that thing. It didn't work too good because it had been used for years and years by GIs. It would work sometimes, and just owning it was exciting. So they traded me. They said, we're going to give you the book and you give us the flashlight. And you'll get your flashlight back and then you'll give us the book back. And I mean, it's really sweet. They knew how to talk to kids. And when you opened the book, it just had regular pages, but sometimes the pages glowed and I couldn't see any print on them. At some point, the switch was made again, and I got the flashlight back, and the being sort of, he put the book on the bed and he sort of waved his hand. He did something over the book, and then I could see this print, and I can still see it to this day. The print was really different. Not an alphabet that I'm aware of, and believe me, I've looked at some alphabets. The book was entitled How to Be a Good Ambassador. The funny thing is that I've kind of been an ambassador for ETs. When I first started channeling, I was channeling ETs, and I channeled ETs pretty much exclusively for years. And for many years I channeled Zeta beings from Zeta Reticuli, because those are the beings I had contact with when I was a kid. And don't let anybody scare you about Zeta beings. They were wonderful, and they were so sweet, and they really knew how to be gentle around a youngster. I know other people have had bad experiences or frightening experiences, but that wasn't my experience at all.
With all of these experiences that you had growing up and throughout your life, was it just obvious that channeling would be the format?
I had no idea, as a result of my childhood, that I would ever be channeling. I didn't know that channeling existed. When I first found out that it existed, I thought it was baloney. When I found out that New Age stuff existed, I couldn't believe that anyone could possibly believe in this. I laughed at it, the whole business. Little did I know that I would eventually discover its great value. And I think I discovered its great value because of my sister. My sister was flying on a plane once, and she had nothing to read, and she loves to read. And this fellow was sitting next to her, and he finished his book, and he said, "Oh, this book is fabulous. I love this book. And would you like to read it?" And she read about 50, 60, 70 pages of it. She said, "Oh, that's kind of interesting." She threw the book in a drawer. And I remember that the reason I got that book from her is that I had a chat with her one day saying, I just don't know what to do with my life. Should I do this? Should I do that? And my sister is very insightful. She doesn't do this kind of work that I do, but she's very insightful and essentially tuned in. And she said, and she told me about that experience on the plane. She said, maybe you ought to read that book. She handed me the book, and it was a Seth book by Jane Roberts. And that's when I discovered it was about how she came to channel. And she was a psychologist, for Pete's sakes. So she was very, mentally coordinated. She said how it happened and what it had given to her life and how much value it had been in her life. And I shifted my whole point of view. Well, this could be great, and this could be wonderful. Of course, as a result of reading the book, it never occurred to me in a million years that I could do that. But I suddenly shifted my position from this is all crazy, this is nuts, to, hey, this has merit. It went up a click.
So can you talk a little bit about how you were introduced or how you met these beings in consciousness that you channeled in the past? Who did you channel then, and who are you channeling now?
Well, in the beginning, when I discovered it was even possible to channel, I was going to a guy's classes who was channeling, and he gave a channeling workshop every now and then, and I decided, well, what the heck, I'll try it. And I'd go to the channeling workshop, and it was kind of interesting. And then at some point he would invite, the being he was channeling would invite various people up from the audience, and you'd sit next to him, and he'd try and get you to channel. And at one point he reached over, he did this, he put his hand in like that. It's sort of like you'd shake hands, only he did this. I was sitting here, okay, here's me, and here's the guy channeling. And the being he was channeling reached over like this, just with those 3 fingers, and touched my arm. And it was like, kind of like having, not quite, but very similar to being plugged into an electrical outlet. It was just like a jolt of something went through my body, and I suddenly, instantaneously, it was an air-conditioned room, and I suddenly was boiling hot and just profusely sweating. That really was the kicker to get me going, and I managed to squeak out a few words that I wasn't thinking. The words just came out. I found out that I could do it in that moment. And that kind of changes your whole world. You know, your world goes along like this, and all of a sudden someone does, and your world suddenly changes. And then the whole idea of this is who I am and this is the path I'm following suddenly goes like that. Now I tend to channel Grandfather more, because he's a being who works with shamans and mystical men and women and people who are doing things, interacting with the world and with all beings in the most benevolent way, to bring about a benevolent world for all. I channel my version of Isis. I realize a lot of people channel Isis. I say my version because the being that speaks through me has said that she is not the Isis that's pictured in the ancient Egyptian arts. My impression is that she can go a lot deeper than that. As a result, I've had a lot of articles published channeling Isis in at least one book. I find that Isis can not only speak deeply and profoundly, but she can also speak very personally and intimately on the occasions when I do private sessions for people. All of you are here because you have proven, every one of you, you have proven in other lives that you are not only trustworthy as souls in your essence of your personality, maybe not in your day-to-day life in every moment, but you have proven to creation that you can and have mastered some level of spiritual mastery. You would not be here now at this crossroads of time on earth if you had not had that experience. It's important for you to know that evil and evil doings are not universal. They are not on other planets. They are not in other parts of the universe. You are experiencing things like that sometimes here because you, the human race on earth now, as your natural native selves in the soul and spirit form, and here in the physical form, have come here to attempt to resolve evil, to transform it to something benevolent. It is a huge task, yes, a Herculean task, but you are trying. You may not be able to accomplish it all in your time here on earth, but you have already accomplished some of it. and what you will do and what you have done, others will carry forward and in time resolve it benevolently. I don't normally speak of these things, but I'm taking this opportunity to speak of it here because I've noticed that there are many people who feel threatened and powerless, and I understand. But there are ways to learn where you can do good for yourself and do good for others, but you cannot exclude anyone. If you wish things to get better, don't exclude anyone with your blessings, even though there will be people you'll be mad at, or groups that you'll be upset with, or individuals that you'll be outraged at. But in your prayers, in your entreaties, in your magic, always do things for people in the most benevolent way, never against. If you try to do things against anyone, you can be absolutely certain that at least their soul, and very possibly the souls of others, will not support it. But if it's benevolent for all beings, many things that are profoundly evil can be resolved. I believe that we can live benevolently by utilizing magic, and we can use it in an exclusively benevolent way that's safe and benevolent for all beings. And that's what I'm learning, that's what I'm teaching, and that's what I like to do. You are all, regardless of how you are called, whether you are Islamic, whether you are Christian, whether you are Jewish, whether you are Baha'i, whatever, you are all one. You are souls, you are from Creator, and you are going to remember this more and more. Sometimes you will have flashes of insight. You are remembering who you are. And when you remember who you are able to access life and memories beyond this planet. You won't be burdened with having to remember all kinds of things from other lives, but you will know what you need to know when you need to know it, just like everybody else in the universe.
The whole world wants to know, where did happiness go? The whole world wants to know, where did wisdom go? The whole world wants to know, where did freedom go? The whole world wants to know, where did love go?
Be kind, be gentle, be supportive, in order to create the most benevolent world.
Well, I could start my own religion. I say it's the only way to the sweet divine. Or I could sit right down, spend some time watching the river, watching the river.
Learn about these things and discover that you can literally change your life and contribute to changing the world and eliminate all evil.
It's alright.